Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we have to start off with a little bit of a disclaimer. Unfortunately, I don't know what happened, but I thought my camera was recording and apparently it wasn't, so I just spoke to the camera without recording for, 25 minutes or so. It happens sometimes, there we go. But I have already tasted the beer this time, so we're kind of doing a secondary review, but I hope that you guys enjoy this one anyway. For this review we are going to head up towards Gothenburg once again, Gothenburg as you would say in Swedish, the Swedish craft beer capital up there on the west coast, and we're going to have a look at another beer from a brewery that you've seen me review many things from before. So this one comes to you from Stigbergets Bryggeri, and this must be review number 35 or so that I've done from these guys, and this one is the Bootsy Double Ipa coming in at 8.5% ABV. So yeah, this one is a New England Hazy IPA, this one, although it does turn out a little bit differently than that, I would say, in the tasting, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. But this beer was released as part of the Lokal Småskaligt assortment for November of 2020 through Stigbergets here in Sweden. So yeah, this beer was one of two that they released this month. Unfortunately the other one, the Amazing Blaze, I couldn't get a hold of that because that seems to have only been released in the local Gothenburg stores, but for some reason the store in Bromölla, which is down here in Skåne in the very northeast corner of the county, for some reason they got it as well, and I was very tempted to go up there and get a can of it, but I just didn't have time actually. But yeah, the Amazing Blaze, which is a West Coast IPA, that was only released locally in Gothenburg for some reason. Not sure why, but I would have loved to have been able to review that one for you as well. But we do have this one, the Bootsy, and this was released originally back in 2017 or 2018 from what I gather, so definitely nice to be able to review this one for you here on the channel, although obviously we had some camera issues, but I hope that you guys will enjoy my take on this one anyway. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Stigbergets Bryggeri before, and you will no doubt see more added to that list in the fairly near future. There's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Stigbergets Bryggeri then, on to my brewery notes. So as I've mentioned to you already, Stigbergets Bryggeri are based in Gothenburg, Göteborg, up on the Swedish west coast, and they were founded by Nils Högkrantz and Richard Simonsson. So these two guys own two bars that share the one kitchen. This is the Bar Kino in the basement and the Hagabjörn's Cafe, which you'll find in the atrium, and these are located on Linnegatan in the city, and they opened back in 2007. And this building is actually an independent cinema, and I would highly recommend that you go and check it out. If you're interested to see what it looks like, check out my out and about video that I did, which I think was filmed back in September or October of 2019, and I did some tastings in there. But yeah, the Bar Kino Hagabjörn's Cafe, kind of the unofficial tap rooms of both Stigbergets and OO Brewing in Gothenburg. Definitely worth checking out, and as I say, check out my out and about video. But basically what happened was that these guys wanted to produce a few beers that they could sell in the bars, and this led to them kegging the beer and then selling it on to other pubs, and eventually to bottling the beers in November of 2014. The original beers that they were producing were mainly English and German styles, but more recently, of course, they made their name when it came to brewing the more hoppy American beer styles. That kind of change of direction came when they had Ole Anderson, who is a very well respected brewer these days. He's one of the co-owners of OO Brewing, and he left Stigbergets in about April of 2017 to go and dedicate his time fully in his own company. He was replaced for a short period of time by Barnaby Struve, who was one of the vice presidents at Three Floyds in Munster in Indiana over in the States, but he moved on very soon after. But I think quite early in 2018, if I'm remembering rightly, they moved to a new brewery at Partihalarna in the city. They were brewing 5,000 litre batches at a time there. And they were also working on some sour beers there as well. They haven't released all that many sours, but yeah, there have been a few sours released from Stigbergets. But they also started selling their beers in these 440ml cans so that they could export a little bit more. Before that, of course, they were releasing them in the 330ml bottles, which are a wee bit heavy, I guess, but they... but that did allow them to get their beer out there a little bit more. I know some of the English guys managed to get a hold of some of the Stigbergets beers as well. But these days they've got a brew team of Ollie Banks, who used to work for Beavertown Brewery in London, and also Lucas Munraid, who was the main man, or the main brewing man, at All In Brewing, one of the numerous Gothenburg gypsy breweries. He's brewed a lot of good beers in his time, in my experience. But yeah, they are now the brew team at Stigbergets, and they've been doing some really great stuff recently, I have to say. But as of summer 2020, they've just moved to a new brewery in Ringen in the city, and they're apparently considering brewing some lambic beer there, which I think should be really cool. A Gothenburg lambic, that would be very, very interesting. And apparently in this new brewery there might be the opportunity for some swimming facilities and a bar as well, so we'll need to see how that goes. The article that I read on beernews.se, which is where I get a lot of the information for the history sections of these videos, they were saying that they wanted to make it like an experience type brewery, so that could make for a very interesting out and about video at some point. So we'll see how that turns out actually. So we'll see about getting that done. That would be very cool. But also be very cool to have Niels and Richard on the channel to do an interview. That would be an awesome thing if we could sort that out. But earlier on in 2020, in April I believe it was, they opened up their own bar in Stockholm, which I'll need to go and check out at some point as well. And they also opened up their own folk ale shop in Gothenburg as well. For those of you that don't know, in Sweden, anything under 3.5%, 3.5 and under I should say, can be sold in the supermarkets. Anything that's 3.6% and above has to be sold in the Systembolaget, the state-owned alcohol stores. So yeah, quite cool that they've got their own folk ale shop in Gothenburg these days, so I need to go and check that out. I know that in Stockholm there is a bottle shop that sells only folk ale, so we'll need to go and have a look at that as well. But as of November 2020, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 85 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and they're always doing some very, very nice IPAs actually. So yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Stigbergets Bryggeri for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. They do have quite a nice website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on. I believe that you know, the Bar Kino, Hagabion's Cafe and things like that, and also the bar in Stockholm, they've all got their own feeds that you can check out, so I would recommend that too. But yeah, you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages if you want to learn more about all the different beers that these guys have done as well. But yeah, I'll just let you have a little look at the can artwork on this one before we start on the second tasting of this beer. But as you can see, it's really quite nice and quite retro, this one. As I said to you earlier, this beer was first released back in 2017 and 2018. I don't know if this was released through Systembolaget originally, or if it was just like a bar release that they did in Gothenburg. Do let me know in the comments section below if you know about that. Yeah, I think I paid about 55 Swedish kroners for this one. So that is, yeah, €5.50, about $6 American, about £4.75, or just a little bit over £5 actually, something like that. No, about £4.50, sorry, £4.50. So yeah, pretty good price for a big double IPA coming in at 8% ABV. The hops in this one are Citra, Simcoe, Soriaci Ace, Columbus and Comet. So, you know, we know all of these hops. Citra has that lovely mango-y note and a lot of tropical fruit complexities. Simcoe has that kind of lovely passion fruity note, and this one it turns out to be nice and oily. Then you've also got the Soriaci Ace, originally produced in Japan but these days grown a lot in America. That's got some lovely citrusy properties. Columbus, as we know, is a kind of classic bittering hop, lovely big spiciness, and you've also got the Comet in there, which has a nice little bit of stone fruity notes to it, like passion fruit and a little bit of mango and stuff like that as well. It's quite an interesting hop that you don't see used all that often anymore. But yeah, all of the hops in this one are interesting. But yeah, let's do a second tasting of this beer then. I'm kind of annoyed that that first review didn't work out, because I was quite happy with that first recording that I did, if you like. But yeah, as you can see with this beer, this one poured a lovely kind of quite rich amber colour. This one, it's almost the same kind of consistency as like a West Coast IPA. When you put the light through it, it definitely has a nice kind of rich, more ambery tone to it. The two things, as I say to you always, that are going to affect the colour of your beer, it's the type of malts that are in it, and it's also how long the boil is. But yeah, this one definitely more of a rich amber colour. When it poured, I poured about 2/3 of the can into the glass, as I always do, and it had about a half finger of a frothy, kind of creamy coloured head there. You can kind of see the remnants of the ring just around the edge of the glass there. But yeah, it does look. It was pretty nice looking when it poured, and it still does look pretty good. But yeah, let's take another look at the aroma then and see how we go on. So in terms of appearance, nothing particularly surprising about this one, although you can see it's not the haziest of IPAs that you are going to find from Stigbergets. So yeah, it does look a little bit more kind of west coasty. But yeah, let's take a look at that aroma then and see how we get on with this one. So yeah, first thing that I noticed about this one was that you really do get a nice little bit of hoppy bite out of this one. You can smell with this beer straight away. It's definitely a bit more kind of dank and floral and spicy and stuff like that. And yeah, straight away you know you notice that nice big kind of floral kick of the hops. But if we look at the malt base first, as we always usually do, you can smell a nice little bit of breadiness to the beer. You can also smell a little bit of a thicker wheaty quality in there, a little bit of bitiness to the wheat in my mind as well, but you also do get a nice little bit of an oaty note out of it as well. You've got some nice brown sugars too. You can smell definitely a bit of that sweet caramel in there, but you also have some of that kind of butter candy Werther's Original as well. This beer, it does strike me in the aroma that it is a little bit more kind of boozy, and it certainly does. It certainly does have a little bit more of that kind of old school New England vibe about it. Which is very, very nice. It does have a wee bit of that almost west coasty kind of brown sugary thing going on. As I've told you before, one of the things that I like with a double IPA is I do like to know that it's a bit boozier and it's a bit heavier. So yeah, straight away with these beers, you know, with this one in particular, you do get the impression this is a big boozy New England IPA, and it does strike me as being a little bit more old school in its aroma. But yeah, the malty side of this beer I think is very nice. Nice oaty smoothness, nice little bit of white bread underneath, some wheaty notes in there, but the wheat in fairness does come across as quite smooth, but also a little bit bitey, some sweet caramel, and a little bit of that kind of butter candy Werther's Original type note out of the beer. But yeah, let's look at the hoppy side of the beer then. So, you know, as I kind of gave the indication of earlier on, you do get a nice big spicy floral aromatic note out of this one. That's the Columbus, very popular bittering hop of course. There is a wee touch of earthiness to this one, and you know, the grassiness that you get out of this beer is, you know, really quite zesty, and I would say that that is probably the Soriachi Ace that's giving you that. You are going to notice as well some really interesting fruity characters to this one. You do get a little bit of that stronger kind of passion fruity note out of the beer. That's going to be both the Citra, pardon me, and the Simcoe that's going to give you a little bit of that, but you do get those nice big oily kind of mango-y notes out of it as well. There's a wee touch of a slightly dried kind of jammy type fruit to this beer as well, a little bit like a dry kind of apricot-y jam. You do get a little bit of that vibe out of this beer, but yeah, stronger passion fruit, a little bit more mango-y note to it as well, some kind of dried apricot-y jammy notes. For me, there's a good bit of citrusy zest to this beer though. You're getting that nice big oily kind of lemony and almost slightly orangey kind of mandarin-y type thing. That's the Soriachi Ace. Soriachi Ace is really distinctive for its very strong citrusy characteristics, and you get a lot of that in this beer. Citra is going to contribute to that a little bit as well, because it can have some lemon limey notes, and you do get a wee bit of a kind of more oily lime in the aroma in this beer as well. But yeah, the Comet, I think, is producing a little bit of an interesting depth to the tropical fruit in this one too. So yeah, tropical fruits, passion fruit, mango, a little bit of that kind of dried apricot-y sort of thing as well. There's maybe one or two little perry esters in here, but yeah, quite a strong citrusy character out of the beer as well. But yeah, that's the Soriachi Ace for you. Soriachi Ace always had a very kind of punchy kick to it. I'd love to see OO Brewing actually do a 100 Soriachi Ace. If they could get an original Japanese grown batch of Soriachi Ace hops, that would be awesome actually, because the American Soriachi Ace I don't think is quite the same as the original Japanese one. But yeah, take a little bit of time to enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. This one really has some interesting characteristics, and it's not often that you see Soriachi Ace used in an IPA these days. But the thing to note about this one is definitely quite a nice big floral aromatic beer, quite citrusy and zesty, and you've also got a good little touch of booziness in the in the aroma of this one as well. So yeah, let's have a second taste of this one then. So yeah, the Bootsy Double IPA, 8.5% ABV from Stigbergets Bryggeri in Gothenburg on the west coast of Sweden. Slange, skål, cheers. So yeah, the first thing that struck me with this beer, it does have a real bite to it when you take it in. You're going to get some of that big kind of spicy floral aromatic note from the Columbus straight away. I don't get it now, of course, but that was the thing that struck me about this beer first. That's one of the things why I always like, I always like to have the can to open. You get that first reaction because your first impression of the beer is a big part of the kind of tasting experience, if you like. But yeah, that big kind of Columbus spicy bitterness to the beer does sit there in this one. But what you'll notice about this beer, in the middle of your palate you've got a lovely smooth white bready base that kind of blankets the middle of your tongue. When you go towards the back of that, when you go towards the back third of your tongue, you'll feel the white breadiness just thickens up a wee bit. There's a little bit of that kind of bitey, wheaty note to it, and then as you move further forward you can feel the wheaty notes in this one just kind of smoothing out a little bit, and then it drops, the thickness of the beer just drops as you move into that middle third of your tongue. On top of that middle third of your tongue you do get a bit of the kind of crisp bready base to the beer, but you can definitely pick up the more kind of smooth oaty characters in there as well. And on top of this one you do get that nice kind of brown sugary element sitting in there as well. The brown sugar's coming out on top of the oaty notes. So yeah, yeah, that nice oaty creamy note in there is very nice in this one. I think that's developed as I've been drinking this beer, to be honest. But yeah, on top of that, in the very centre of the palate, you do get a very kind of nice oily, boozy, caramelly sweetness coming out of this one. As you move further out towards the edge of the palate there, you do get a little bit more of that kind of biscuity, McVitie's Digestive sort of biscuity thing. But there's also a little bit of that kind of there is also a little bit of that more kind of Werther's Original type kind of candied thing in there as well. That was a bit more apparent when I tasted the beer the first time, that kind of Werther's Original type vibe to it. But yeah, it was really, that was a bit more apparent. But I think, yeah, as you drink more and more of this beer, you are going to get more of a kind of sweeter, caramelly, boozy element out of it. But yeah, it does have a little bit of that kind of West Coast IPA vibe in terms of the way the brown sugars in the beer come out. But yeah, it's got the kind of more New England backbone, if that makes sense. So it's got a nice hybrid, I have to say, in the malt base of the beer. But yeah, I think that kind of description so far kind of covers it. And the further that you go into the aftertaste, you can feel the oatiness of the beer. I think the middle of your palate does just thicken up a little bit as you progress further into the aftertaste with this one. But yeah, on the hoppy side of the beer then, back corners of the palate, you do get a little bit of earthiness out of this one, but straight away it does start to evolve to be more of a kind of big floral aromatic sort of thing. You do have a nice kind of spicy note to this beer, and that's the Columbus. As you move further forward along the sides of your palate, you get more and more of that kind of spicy Columbus there, and then around the very front curve of the palate you get a nice big zesty kind of grassy quality out of it. I would say the green side of the beer leans a little bit more towards the zesty grassy side as you progress, as you get more and more used to it, but the big kind of spicy bitterness from the Columbus plays a big role early on when you're drinking this one as well. But yeah, the green side of the beer for me, I think, is really nice. This one definitely has a little bit more of a kind of bitter bite to it, actually. It's that trademark spiciness from the Columbus that really shows here, and Soriachi Ace with its big zesty kind of qualities too. But let's look at the fruity part of the beer then. So yeah, the fruity part of the beer then, the fruitiness side in this one, as I always say, front third of your tongue, that's where you get that nice oily bubble, where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So yeah, if you go towards the back of that front third of your palate, you do get a nice kind of slightly stronger passion fruity note out of the beer. That's going to be both the Citra and the Simcoe that are giving you that. But as you move further forward, you start to get, it starts to evolve to be more of a kind of oily, mango-y note and that kind of moves as you go further forward. You can feel a little bit of that apricotty jammy kind of thing sitting on top of it, but then as you reach the front half of that front third of your tongue, you get that really nice oily, citrusy character out of the beer as well, and that's the Soriachi Ace coming out. The Comet, I think, is maybe contributing a little bit to the tropical side of the beer, and I think Citra will give you a little bit, you can get a little touch of a limey note just kind of sitting underneath the big oily Soriachi Ace. I mean, it does have a wee bit of a kind of mandarin, like that really mandarin-y sharp kind of note to it, but really it's a big oily lemony zest sort of thing with this one. And one of the comments I made in my first recording of this was that the Soriachi Ace, I've not had it for a while, but I think if I was blind tasting this beer and not knowing the hops, I would maybe think that this is like Centennial, because the flavours that you get out of Soriachi Ace are quite like Centennial in a way, but they just feel more oily. It's almost like if you compare, say, Amarillo and Mosaic. You know, Amarillo has that really oily classic orange character, whereas Mosaic has the slightly brighter, juicier kind of that slightly juicier, brighter, more what's the word I'm looking for, tangerine note. And it's the same, I think, between Soriachi Ace and Centennial. Centennial is a very bright, sharp lemon, whereas Soriachi Ace is definitely a kind of more oily lemon in that sense. It still has the same zestiness, but it's definitely more of an oily character. So the Soriachi Ace for me, that really sits there at the very front of the palate here. You get some limey notes, I think, from the, which I guess would be from the Citra underneath that, but then you've got that big oily, nice limey kind of character sitting on front of on the front part of your palate as well with this one. So yeah, the flavours that come out of this one on the fruity side are very nice. It's a big oily kind of boozy beer, this one. So on a couple of hands it does have a little bit of a west coasty character, the big oily fruits and some of the brown sugary notes, but then it's got that nice kind of smooth New England backbone, this one. You know, it does strike me as being you do at some stages with these kind of IPAs, you know, when you're at 8.5%, you do need a little bit of that kind of one of the more brown sugary type malts just to sweeten them out a little bit, especially if you're going for an old school approach of a kind of oaty, wheaty based malt base. And I've said with the other Stigbergets beers recently, they've you know, they have been adding a little bit more sweetness into them, I think, recently with that kind of Werther's Original type flavour. This one is definitely more kind of old school in my mind, but this one strikes me as being a little bit more almost west coasty in a lot of ways than some of their other beers have been actually. So maybe they were just fancying doing some west coast IPAs this month. I'm quite gutted that I never managed to get a hold of the Amazing Blaze. I would have loved to have reviewed that for you here on the channel. But yeah, this one for me, a big oily, both in terms of fruitiness and in terms of maltiness, a big oily kind of New England IPA, this one. I never actually checked the can, so it does say on here, this one is just it is actually just it's malted barley and wheat that's in this one, so it doesn't even have oats in it, but it actually does give you the impression of an oaty quality in the middle of the palate there for sure. I would have thought this one did have an oaty kind of base to it, to be honest. But yeah, big oily kind of New England IPA, this one. Maybe it should be termed as just a, you know, an American IPA. I know that Untappd has that category, IPA-American. That's probably where this one fits in. But yeah, it is a nice beer, this one, and definitely a little bit more old school from Stigbergets, I think. In terms of the mouthfeel then, I would describe this beer as being, you know, kind of bottom end of full bodied. I would definitely say that. But yeah, the carbonation is very, very smooth. The mouthfeel overall, like I said, is quite big and quite oily. In terms of bitterness, I think this one sits in around, you know, 50 or 60 IBUs. This one definitely has a little bit more of a kind of big oily bitiness there. It's the Columbus, I think, that really just gives it a bit more of that kind of bitiness. The malt base has a really nice smoothness to it, but you also get some really oily kind of sweet brown sugars in there, and you've got some nice juicy fruity notes too, but I'd say the fruity side of the beer is very oily again. So yeah, it's a bit of a kind of old school kind of New England thing. If you think back to what the New England IPAs were back in, you know, sort of 2015, 2016, this one's just like a very oily version of those kind of old school New England IPAs in my mind. But yeah, it is a nice beer, this one, and I'm glad that I got to review this one, having, I guess, missed it perhaps when I was in Durham for a little while. in England back at that time. So yeah, I guess let's leave it at that for this review. So like I said guys, this one was a little bit different. This was a kind of almost secondary review because I thought I was filming, but apparently I wasn't, and I spoke to the camera for 25 minutes with no video produced. Just happens sometimes, I guess. But yeah, no, I hope that you guys enjoyed this review. It's quite interesting to do a kind of second review of something and revisit it, so maybe I need to do a few revisit reviews on the channel, but at the same time I do like giving my first impressions of a beer in these reviews. But I hope you found this one interesting regardless. You know, I don't think I was going to be able to get a hold of this beer again, which was why I decided to just go for it instead of getting another can. You know, these things, the Stigbergets ones, sell out, you know, pretty quickly, plus the fact you'd be waiting a bit more time for it to come into the store and things like that, and then again it is a kind of retaste anyway. So yeah, it is nice. We can talk about how the flavours develop a little bit more, but lovely big oily IPA this one. Have a go at it because it is quite a bit different from some of the other Stigbergets ones. The other question would be, is it my favourite one that I've had from Stigbergets in recent times? I don't know about that. I think the triple IPA that these guys released recently, and the name of that's gone right out of my head, that was a really good one. The King of Hops, I think, and the Queen of Hops were both really nice. I really enjoyed those. So yeah, this is another very, very solid one that is quite different, but I wouldn't necessarily say this is my favourite one I've had from them in recent times, but another great beer from Stigbergets, so we have to give them a thumbs up for that. But yeah, this was the Bootsy Double IPA coming in at 8.5% ABV, a lovely big oily and slightly more bitter beer from Stigbergets this time, and it turned out very nicely. So yeah, thank you again for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Stigbergets Bryggeri. I hope you enjoyed this kind of retrospective review that we did this time. I do apologise. Going to try and sort out this bloody camera, and we'll see how we get on with this one. But until the next time, thank you for watching. Check out my social media, and I'll catch you guys later. Slange at school. Cheers. The Bootsie Double IPA, 8.5% ABV from Gothenburg on the west coast of Sweden. Cheers.